Hey guys, here's that fast castle video that I promised you in my previous video. If you haven't watched that, please check it out. It'll give you a lot of background. As we're moving into this game, I just want to make note of the map type because it will affect what you're doing. Arabia typically has less wood. On an ocean map, you may want to incorporate fishing into it. This one, I'm playing coastal, as you see in front of you. Also, you may note the difficulty is easiest. That's just because I didn't want anyone to be bothering me. And on easiest, we know that they will not. So let's just go ahead and hop right into it. So the first thing that I do here is I send 2 villagers to build a house as I begin to create a couple of more villagers in the town center. The reason for this is you may see we have already 4 out of 5 population, and that means if we don't have 2 villagers working on it, we're instantly going to get pop blocked. Then we get people working, just have them work on wood. You can use your villagers to scout as well, but I just chose not to in this case. I wasn't super concerned. I had already found my sheep and both my boars with my scout, so I didn't really need to send any villagers. So I immediately send them all onto food so that I can begin upping that food production. As you can see, I'm already at 0 because I've queued it all up. Please stop, cat. We want to keep those villagers coming just constantly. There's no reason it should ever stop. The only reason is if you choose to get loom, which will help you with your board draws, as well as if a wolf comes up, your villager will actually be able to kill the wolf instead of dying to it, which makes a huge difference. So you see here, as I'm doing the board draw, we want to hit it twice, and then bring it back to the town center. We're having everyone else hit it. If the hunter needs it, then I'll go ahead and garrison him inside of the town center, but it looks like he's fine, actually. So I'll just keep him there. And I'll make sure later to have him be on a farm that's close to the town center in case of an attack, so he can get saved because he's at low health. Also, I'm trying to pay close attention to that population I have. As soon as I'm 2 away, at least I want to make sure that I have 1 worker on a building. If it's 2, then pull something off of wood. You want to have 2 workers on there if there's only 1 pop remaining. So now we're up to 15, and you may be wondering, when does the actual fast castle of this begin? Well, when you're fast castling, what you want first is to just have as many workers as you possibly can. That's for the first minute or 2 of the game. Once you hit about 20 to 25 workers, you should be at the point where you can actually go up to feudal. When you go up to feudal, we'll talk about that later, but for now, I just want to spend a little more time on what's in the early game. We'll just go through and commentate the whole game so that there's nothing missed. And recall, we right now have about 10 because our scout is included in it. Now we have 11 workers, and soon that should become 12 and 13 and so on and so forth. You should never ever have a time where it's paused. See, we're getting the other house down at the correct time. You see we're at 13 pop out of 15. We have all of our villagers doing their respective tasks. You may hear the "you can't click that button" or "there's nothing to click" sound a lot. That's because I'm spending a lot of time trying to check and see if I have any active villagers. I have a hotkey. I put it on my mouse for easy access, and the other hotkey on my mouse I've bound to cycle town centers. So you can see I can just swap from my scout to my idle villagers to my town center. So there's never a moment of downtime. I probably should have pulled this second boar earlier, but in reality it's alright. The goal of this is not to show you the optimal fast castle build, because there's been a million people that have shown that a million times. You can find out exactly what's to go first, what's to go second, what's to go third. You can really get as detailed as that, of course, where you have everything down to the most efficient that it possibly can get. That requires maybe faster hands than I have, more experienced hands at the very least. And so for that reason, I figured just to let the mistakes happen. This is how most early first castles are going to look, if not a little worse. Maybe a little better. It all just depends upon you. But the reality is you're going to be playing a game. You probably can't back out of it if it's an online multiplayer game. And you're just going to have to deal with whatever mistakes you have. Like, a lot of the time you're going to see that I have an improper balance of workers on wood versus food, and for a little bit versus gold. Right now, you see I have 250 wood, yet I only have 82 food. That's not super good. I should have a couple of farms up by now, but considering that I've still got people on a sheep and on a boar, that's okay. You should see me building some farms pretty soon, because if I don't do that, then that means I've made a huge mistake. Also, while we're looking at it, let's talk a little about scouting. As this character's easiest difficulty, it's not actually required in any way, shape, or form. But it does make it a little bit easier, to say the least, when you're playing against a real opponent, or even a computer that's a harder difficulty. This will enable you to know if they're also going fast castle. Like, you see, I don't have a barracks. That's how it should be. We don't have wood to waste on a barracks. But if you go over there and see they have a barracks, that means you need to modify your plans a little bit. Maybe throw a barracks up of your own. Because that means one of two things. They're dumb and don't know how to fast castle. And the one we're going to assume is that they're planning on doing a little more aggressive build. And you want to be prepared for that. In that case, I mean, you have multiple options. You can, as soon as feudal age hits, you can throw up a couple towers. Make sure you have some people in stone a little earlier, especially if you want to build a castle the moment you go into castle age, which I typically don't recommend. I recommend getting at least one town center first, maybe even two, considering the point of fast castle is so that you can just build workers at a rate that they cannot, because you'll have multiple town centers and therefore much more workers. See, I'm even paying attention now. This is a pretty decent food wood balance at this stage, what I have in my supplies. That may not mean that my workers are gathering the correct resources for what I have. One thing that I may do, if I were to do this again, is to throw another person, well, not another person, throw a first person on a mine already. Like you see right now, I'm putting down a lumber camp. This does make it more efficient. Pretty much if you can fit another lumber camp in, it's worth putting it down. It will make your people get a lot faster. But I only have 140 wood, and I want to be able to throw down my blacksmith at the very least immediately upon moving into feudal. When you go into Castle Age, you want two things: a blacksmith and a market, because those are the two most relevant buildings that you can get in the feudal age that will enable you to go up to castle, meet the requirements for having two feudal age buildings that don't require you having a barracks or anything first. The market especially will be good if you happen to be missing out just a little bit of gold, which I end up not having in this game. And then I was able to just sell a bit of food, and we were good to go. So boom, you see feudal age, throwing down the barracks. Also earlier I was just making sure there wasn't a closer gold to my town center. That's why I was looking around with a mine selected. This is kind of a debatable question, but you see I'm building workers in between feudal and castle. You should be doing that, and just for the record, do not get wheelbarrow or town watch unless you feel you absolutely need it before you go up to castle. It's not worth the food. It will delay your castle timing significantly, considering the whole point of doing this build is so that you can have a castle time that's faster than other people. There's no point in delaying it for things that don't actually contribute to that goal. Also, if you've been paying attention now, I'd have a lot of workers on bushes and not a whole lot of wood in my stash. That's not good at all, because all those people are going to finish up the bush, and all of a sudden I'm not going to have any wood at all for farms, which I need them on. I can't afford to have 4 or 5 workers immediately just drop off of food. See, I'm just really impatient. I want to throw down that market, and so I'm having the person be there immediately. Still do it a little inefficiently, but that's fine. So now we have the 2 required things. We have the 800 required food, which is just great, but we don't actually have the 200 gold. I believe I noticed this pretty soon and send another person or 2 over there, but all the same, we're gonna have to throw some bodies or throw some food into the trash so that we can have that gold from the market. Also, look at all those people I just had to send off that bush and go and get wood. That hurts. That hurts bad. See, throw at least one of them onto gold, which is good. You see, I have the market up. I'm gonna get wise. I'm gonna sell some food. Boop, there's enough. So see, even though you make mistakes, and that technically may have been not the most efficient thing to do, we're still going to be hitting Castle Age at a reasonable time. I will have all of the expected timings on the screen for you. That way you can kind of know what benchmarks we're shooting for. If you're doing a fast castle build, then you have to hit castle quickly, or else you're just going to be beat by anyone who's has a more focused goal that they're actually achieving. For instance, if this person, who did have a barrack stand, by the way, in the feudal age, had decided to, in the dark age, if they had decided to rush me, which is a dark age rush, I would have been able to throw my workers inside of the town center and hope and pray. That's the importance of scouting in an online game. Being able to actually react to what your opponent's doing and making sure that your build, while may not be the direct counter to whatever they're doing, is still something that you can continue through. Because at this point, I've already invested too much. If I had been rushed earlier, then I would have had to continue trying to go for the economy build because my opponent would still have the leg up on me. And you can see now how many workers I have on each thing. 9 farmers, 15 lumberjacks, 3 farmers, miners, and we got another 2 that just showed up on farmer. Maybe that was some kind of a bug because I don't recall putting anyone on there. Got another 2 people going on mines out of the lumber line. And this is where the power of Castle Age comes in. Boom. Instantly hit Castle Age, throwing down another town center. We're just building workers as fast as humanly possible. I'm going to have many, many times the resources of this other person. Also, I'm completely out of stone, which is expected if you immediately throw down 2 town centers. Again, if you intend on, as soon as you hit Castle Age, to go for the castle, try to get a couple units out or the defenses up, then you're going to need to put someone on stone earlier, which naturally will delay your castle timing, but if it's necessary, it's necessary. And you see, this is just poor on my part. We don't have the correct ratio of lumberjacks to farmers, because I simply don't have enough to continue building houses, which, by the way, I'm pot blocked right now, as well as build farms. This is probably one of the biggest mistakes one can make. In a way, I'm glad it's in there, not only because it embarrasses me and keeps me humble, but also it's an example of one of those typical things that you can mess up on. You can do a little bit of research based on if you intend on going more aggressive, whatever. You can find out exactly how many workers you're going to need on the lumber line versus how many are going to be on the farms. I myself, if you're not building anything else, usually have about equal, because let's be real, you're not going to be building the same amount. Even equal is not enough. I would usually put more people on the lumber line just because there's so many things that you have to keep up the wood production with. With food, with a fast castle rush like this, it's basically all going into villagers. Like, have you seen me build another unit? No, you haven't. Right now, perhaps we've gotten a couple upgrades that cost food, but that's it. While wood, that's every single building that I'm doing. That's every farm I'm doing. And so that's why you need to be a little bit more lumberjack heavy. Also, at this point, it's definitely worth it to get wheelbarrow. You see that I already got the lumber gathering upgrades as well as the farm upgrades. That's very important. And just helpful hint, farm upgrades are not applied to already existing farms. So if you're planning on upgrading your farms to have more food capacity at the mill, which you should be doing, and you also want to be throwing down a couple farms around the same time, just give it a second. Don't throw the farms down yet, because you'll have more efficient farms if you wait until after the upgrade is completed. Also, I'm at that point in the game where it's basically a no-brainer to have someone building houses constantly. Often I end up goofing, get pop blocked, and just drop down like 20 at once, but you know, that's whatever. The point of this, again, is to be a basic introduction, not a I'm gonna go pro and beat everyone with this build all the time. If you're anticipating that, you probably should go to a different channel. Like, any different channel. So I made a questionable decision here to have that worker go with the sheep. I feel like it would have been better just to pull the people off of the farms nearby, have them kill the sheep, and once the sheep is done, go back to their farms. And just have that person go to stone, because I was wanting to throw up a castle a little sooner, but again, hindsight's 2020. Oh well, sheepsies are great. They get captured, they're happy to join our little group, and then we immediately murder them. So you see, at this point I have a lot more wood than I have food. That's because I am pumping villagers out of 3 separate town centers, and I didn't necessarily add that many people onto my lumber line. And now, extremely late, because I have been focusing 100% on my resources. Which, by the way, I noticed that they have 3 skirmishers. Not super upset about about delaying that barracks. But in a real game, I definitely would have thrown out a barracks much quicker. Probably as soon as I hit Castle Age. But again, this all depends. This is a 1v1 situation, but if you're playing a 3v3 situation, you happen to be the pocket player, which is the player that has your 2 allies on your flanks, then why not? Like, they'll protect you. They have to go through them first anyways. Might as well just go crazy. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do as the pocket player. The other person has just barely hit Castle Age, which is cute, but again, easiest computers are not to be used as a baseline for literally anything. You see, I currently have 3 lumber camps just all built in a row. Totally worth it. I may have even thrown one up a little further to the north. Okay, kitten. You have to leave. At some point, I accidentally queue up 5 villagers at once. That's because my cat was laying on the shift key as I clicked on my villagers. He was not letting me play my game. I was worried he was going to make me lose against the easy computer. Now that would have been truly embarrassing, and it would never have made YouTube. Even against a hard opponent, I probably wouldn't have put that on YouTube, because, again, I'm prideful. You see, I am now getting all the upgrades, handcart, all those things. Handcart, I think, is worth it when you are at like 45 workers, if I'm not mistaken. But basically just get it when you have a spare moment. You see, even though I obviously have probably like 20 more workers than my opponent at this point, I'm still having food shortages, which is in a way a good thing. That means I'm using all the food I'm getting on something that I think is helpful. But at the same time, it's also preventing me from building up an army. Ways you can prevent this are, well, besides having more farmers, of course, you don't queue up workers at all. You just do one at a time. That requires a little bit more micromanagement of your town centers, because you have to constantly be going back instead of queuing up 1 or 2 at a time. Instead of queuing up like 3 or 4 at a time and just being there. Like, look at all that food that's just in my held up inside my crossbowman right now. If I had canceled those, I definitely would have been able to get the upgrade that we see that I wasn't able to afford earlier. Oh no, their scout is here. this point, I'm just doing what fast castlers do. Build tons of workers. See, I'm currently at 66 pop. I have like maybe 10 military units. Considering that we're only about 18 minutes in, that's not super bad. If you're playing this perfect... Oh, see, there's that. Those extra queued up workers I didn't intend to do. But I have sufficient food in the stock, so I don't even care. Although I think I fix it anyways. And so you see, literally all I'm trying to do at this point in the game is build workers and make sure my workers are busy with something. I am now expanding into the military a little bit more, but that is in no way the point of this game. The number one thing that, and I feel like I've explained this in different words at least a dozen times, the number one mistake that people make when it comes to builds, it's not that you're completely missing something. The biggest problem people make with builds is 100% that they don't have the economy to back up what they're planning on doing. If you want to have a 100-person army, and you want to be able to constantly be replacing the units that die from said army, guess what? You're not going to be able to do that out of one barracks and with 20 workers. It's just not going to happen, and I see so many people try to do that. See, I've already got another barracks up, so I can be doing upgrades as well as building more units. As a matter of fact, this should have been happening a long time ago. If you see, my stockpile of food is at 1,000 and my wood is at 900. Why? I can spare a couple of workers from the wood line just for a second or two to drop down another 2 barracks and 2 archery ranges. Then I can start utilizing those resources that I have stockpiled. Because if I die with 1,000 of each resource, it doesn't make a difference. I still lost. Those resources did not do anything for me. Having less resources in your stockpile is actually better. The only time where it is acceptable is when you pretty much have all the upgrades you want and you have max pop and you're just anticipating riding it out and sending your army out, having them fight, them die, and then you just instantly replace them because you have nothing else to do with your money. Also, this here is the power of loom. That guy's not gonna die, I don't even care. I just want to make sure it wasn't 2 wolves, because if it's 2 wolves then we would have had a problem. Also, you're noticing that I'm prioritizing the infantry armor and then the archer attack. That's because I want my infantry to be in the front, taking the brunt of the damage, which makes sense, of course. And my archers doing most of the damage. I'm the Britons, so that means I'm just going to be throwing out tons of crossbowmen and then eventually longbowmen once that castle is finally finished. See, look at that puppy. 22 HP. It's more than half. You got attacked by a wolf. I don't think more than half my body would be left if I got attacked by a wolf. If I had a loom, maybe. The extra armor, it's just so good. Also, queuing up that many archers was stupid. My castle was about to be finished, and I knew I wanted my army to be mostly longbowmen. So why waste the same resources on something I didn't even want? But it's whatever. Also, I'm walling in more for demonstrational purposes of, hey, sometimes people wall in, as opposed to something that I actually feel as though it's important. Because it wasn't. Also, at times like this, it might be more useful, honestly, just sell some of that stockpiled stuff if I'm not going to use it, and then just pump out tons of upgrades with all of the extra gold. Also, as the pocket player in a multiplayer game, you should be building trade cards as well, because gold is pretty much the single most important resource, especially for a pocket player. But as there is no one for me to trade with, I am not going to do that. Also, I'm building these spearmen. Yes, they are worthless, but I'm just going to upgrade them from a different barracks while they are being pumped out. 2 mangonels because I can. In a more ideal army composition, I would certainly try to have more than 2 mangonels. if I want to go the siege route. Probably 4, maybe 5 or 6. A couple battering rams to soak up archer fire. Because, by the way, battering rams only take 1 damage per arrow, because they have absurdly high pierce armor. Now that little unit created sound, that is the orgasm of the ears that people get to experience when they do a fast castle, because you just constantly are building things. And I'd love to see my opponent now and just compare. Again, it's not a benchmark, it's just fun. Lock in the gate so my units that are all on aggressive stance don't just wander off after some scout. Especially not the onagers, which are up front. Also, I was researching town patrol. You should probably never research that. It's an enormous amount of gold and food so that your buildings can see further. If you were smart, you just have a couple of scouts that you're building out of your stables that you're just throwing at the enemies to see what they got. Costs a lot less than any stupid town watch upgrade and is significantly cheaper. Gives you more than 10 seconds warning. Actually, 10 seconds is generous. Gives you more than half a second's warning. And hey, I got stone. Throw up some towers. At this point, you've mostly seen the entire fast castle build. I'm going to go ahead and let the rest of this replay run out. I'm going to even add in some commentary. But this is it. We've got the economy we want. We're even going up to Imperial now, which for 25 minutes is quite good. In a game where you're actually fighting, it's pretty common not to go up to Imperial until like 40-45 minutes later even. But because I have been absolutely not pressured at all, I did that. Also, it's often worth just getting those relics a little earlier. I just didn't bother. Also, when you queue up workers to build something, they will always start with the last thing that you queue up. And so if you're doing them, if you're selecting those buildings to go from the nearest one to the outermost one, usually at the end you want to just have them go to the nearest one to save a little bit of time. Also, it's smart to micromanage your villagers sometimes, like have them build from the other side of the wall so they don't just get stuck on the outside and have to spend a million years walking back, or, you know, get killed in the process of walking back. I have my little monks, sending them to do my bidding, my religious bidding of picking up white and gold little tower thingies that are in the middle of the tundra. Seems legit. And because we're Imperial and obviously light years ahead of this other person, might as well just take the units we have and steamroll them. Look at that. Look at those buildings. Look how beautiful they are when they're Imperial. That's my #1 reason for going up to Imperial. That and sometimes bombard towers and actually a lot of other things, but it's whatever. Those lumberjacks definitely could have used that a long time ago. Also, you see in the bottom left right now, well, now bottom right, all of my workers are still mining stone, but from a ridiculously long distance. That should not ever happen. See, look at all the things I'm selling. Look at all the things I could have sold a long time ago and actually had upgrades going a long time ago. Or had Imperial going a long time ago. Having things in your stockpile is just utterly worthless. Try to avoid it at all costs. If any of you play StarCraft, you may know this because in StarCraft it actually tells you your average unspent resources. The less you have of average unspent resources, the better. Which, for me, the first time I heard it was quite counterintuitive, but eventually I figured it out, that you can't kill your enemy with wood that's in the stockpile. They only have 2 people on their main goals. Seems legit. Send in the relics back so I can have all that money that I definitely need right now. We have 2 spearmen, a crossbowman. Let's see, do they send anything else out? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 more crossbowmen. Terrifying. I don't know who actually plays on easiest difficulty. Maybe 2-year-olds? Really just doesn't make much sense. Also, I'm getting the arson thing just so I can kill the computer faster. At this point, I realized there was going to be no fun in this game. Also, I'm killing my own men with siege, which was dumb. There's no reason to do that. At least I should have had them go around the back and start hitting it instead of stand right where the catapults are hitting. The workers are trying to save themselves by walking back into the burning town center. Seems legit. I won, unsurprisingly. And there you have it, folks. That is a fast castle against the easiest opponent. Now try it on your own against someone that's not an easy opponent. Send me in all of your replays and I'll let you know what you did wrong, what you did right, and maybe even a little bit more. Who knows? Thanks for watching, guys.